guys, how's it going today? I hope we've had a great week. Happy Friday. We've made it to the end of another week. There's been a lot of changes going on in the world, in the energy. So many people are feeling big shifts, changes in consciousness, changes in being. There's a lot of change going on in the world, and it's a good change because things are shifting. Time is moving faster. I'm not going to go into all the, I guess you could call this conspiracy theories or even scientific explanations as to why people think that, but there's a lot going on. And this week, the theme that we're moving into is the theme of managing strong emotions. And today, I'd like to focus specifically on emotional flashbacks, as if you're someone with PTSD or CPTSD, you are quite familiar with flashbacks, most likely. And most people know about normal flashbacks, where you see image flash on your mind or across your mind that then leads you to an emotional spiral or a thinking spiral, that can, take some time to come down from. But another kind of flashback that many people aren't so aware of are emotional flashbacks. And these are things, flashbacks, experiences that come without any imagery, without any knowledge or understanding to where they originate from. Initially, if you take time to reflect, you'll begin to understand these patterns. But initially, emotional flashbacks are just like flashes of energy that comes back to you and sometimes take you over from past experiences. And they can be frustrating. They can be very frustrating because you don't have an image to tie it to, and therefore something to look at directly to address or correct it, And so it's so important as we move into this week, managing strong emotions, to take some time to think about emotional flashbacks. Now, we're going to listen to a portion of a video talk by the Crappy Childhood Fairy, where she's explaining emotional flashbacks, what they are. As always, we'll only listen to a portion of this, and I encourage you to click on the link in the show notes to listen to the video in its entirety. You'll also see there another link to Pete Walker's 13 Steps for Managing Emotional Flashbacks. Pete Walker is an author. He's not a therapist, but he's someone who has lived experience, and he's written a book. I'm forgetting the name of the book. Pete Walker, from Complex PTSD from Surviving to Thriving. So in this book, he explains his own personal experiences, challenges, and victories in working with CPTSD, how he's overcome them, and he's created an excellent list that has an outline of how to address your emotional flashbacks. I've also, if you check out the meditations for Reparenting Daily, or you can go on the YouTube channel and check out the Pete Walker 13 Steps. I also did a meditation, a spoken recording of that. And I did that as a tool so you guys can have a resource that if you're having an emotional flashback or you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, this is like something that you can click on, listen to, so you don't have to actually read it yourself. You can just listen to it. And sometimes you need like some kind of outside perspective or outside voice to get you outside of that emotional flashback, or at least to gain perspective. I mean, I'm still at the point personally where sometimes they overtake me, the emotional flashbacks, and I have difficulty to even realize where I am, in terms of like my actual current day situation and emotional reality. And so that's why I created something that you can just listen to, those 13 steps, and hopefully that will allow you to begin to make some distance. And so when you're having these emotional flashbacks, the idea is that you can go back to this resource and at least begin to gain mastery of your ability to acknowledge when you're in an emotional flashback, because that's the first step. Once you can acknowledge it, then you can begin to work through it. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and listen to the Crabby Childhood Fairy and see what she has to say.
Hi, I'm Anna Runkle, also known as the Crappy Childhood Fairy. I'm in the middle right now of creating my new dysregulation boot camp, and I tell a story in there about waking up dysregulated sometimes, which is why I recommend to everyone that they have a consistent morning routine. But one of the things I wanted to share with everybody is about the phenomenon of emotional flashbacks. And this is a concept that was introduced to me by Pete Walker, who is a hero and pioneer to many of us working to heal CPTSD. And I'll give you a link to his work in the description below. But emotional flashbacks are very similar to ordinary flashbacks that are well known in connection to adult onset PTSD, the kind combat veterans might get after battle. And in that kind of flashback, a person might be experiencing feelings and sensations connected to the traumatic event, and it hijacks the nervous system and it keeps looping, but they know that it's happening and they know what the memory is about. An emotional flashback is something common for those of us who experienced neglect and abuse when we were little. The feeling comes back without any associated memories, and because there's no information there, you might be thinking that the feeling is about what's happening in the present. An emotional flashback might feel like irritability or sadness or a feeling like you can't move or a feeling like you've just got to get away from your current circumstances. When I get it, it's a feeling of agitation that is there when I wake up, and it generally follows the same telltale pattern. I wake up already ruminating about things and feeling stressed out. Before I know I'm even awake sometimes, my mind will just fill up with a giant to-do list. And then it's like a computer crashing. I get completely overwhelmed with a sense that there's too much to do and no one else is doing their share, and I'm gonna have to do everything. And I have a husband and 2 teenage sons, so there is always a certain amount of truth to that. But the emotional flashback is not really connected to that. It's coming from my early childhood, growing up neglected and drowning in chaos from my parents' alcoholism, and freaking out that, oh my God, the grown-ups are not gonna feed me or get me to school, and if I'm gonna survive this, I'm going to have to do everything. And it was terrifying, and it made me despair, and it left me with a lot of anger that seems to have burned way back into my wiring. So the overwhelm I wake up with sometimes is not about the to-do list, it's a flashback. I have to do everything or else. And when it's happening, it looks totally to be about my present situation to me, even though I have pretty good circumstances right now. And if I don't stop, notice what's happening, and take measures to re-regulate, my overwhelm will be going along at a pretty good throttle by the time my husband wakes up. And he knows before I know. I bring him a cup of coffee and I think I'm being all nice, but he sees that list I've made, this long list, and he's like, uh-oh. And I can see he's trying to find a way to scooch on out of the bedroom before it starts. And that means I'd better go get myself re-regulated, or there's gonna be an argument. About what? About my feeling that I have to do everything. So you might relate to this.
Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed this little taster of the Crappy Childhood Fairy. If you haven't come across her, she has some excellent content, and she has created courses and various things. She's done a lot of work on her own and has been doing this for quite some time. She's quite charming and has an interesting and enjoyable way of communicating information, the lessons that she's learned. And she has many more videos on emotional flashbacks that I encourage you to look for on YouTube. One thing I would like to say about emotional flashbacks, I know they're difficult. They're challenging. It's not easy to manage emotional flashbacks and to live within them, especially if you don't have a sufficient support system. It's so important that we learn how to take care of ourselves, how to come back to ourselves, how to re-regulate once that we are able to gain, the awareness that we're having an emotional flashback. The next step is to step back and to begin to process that, to feel it, and to gain mastery, first of all, on our ability to recognize the emotional flashbacks, because that's the difficult part. Once you can recognize it, you're almost in the clear. That's like 75%, maybe even 90% of the problem, is actually just recognizing when you're in an emotional flashback, so you're not just caught up in the whirlwind. That's why you can create, what do you call these things? I guess some people call them an anchor. For example, you can have a ring that you wear that you can touch, turn on your finger when your emotions are coming at you like a wave, or you could have a picture in your house that you stare at, for example, when you feel the emotions coming. Some kind of anchor that helps you to calm down and re-regulate. And so this is something that I've heard from who is the person who introduced this idea to me? Justin Sinceri. So I did an interview with him in the beginning of this project, when I started doing Reparenting Daily. I was doing interviews at first, and I interviewed Justin Sinceri, and he has a podcast, Stuck Not Broken, where he is really focusing on polyvagal theory, emotional regulation, emotional balance, working with the nervous system. And so he also explains a lot of this in his work and his discussions, he's actually a therapist, so he has, trained, certified, like official knowledge, quote unquote. So definitely check him out if you haven't already heard of him. He's a great. He has an excellent podcast. A very nice guy, very down to earth, and very regulating. I find his voice is like very calming, and the content that he shares is quite effective and really reaching people at different levels of dysregulation. Some people have like slight dysregulation, some people have like extreme dysregulation, but his content really is a gentle reminder to us that we do have capacity and options in learning how to work with our flashbacks and to re-regulate our system. And so today, as we're focusing or have focused on the topic of emotional flashbacks and managing strong emotions, I would like to encourage you to think about how you can establish anchors or routines or processes to add into your day when you feel that you're in, an emotional flashback, so that you can come back to yourself and make more effective decisions. Because between stimulus and response, there's that gap of time, right? And so what we're really trying to do is gain access to that gap of time that allows us to release our guards, to decrease our guards. This is where choice begins. This is when we begin to step into a new identity. This is when we begin to circle up into a new timeline where we are more grounded and embodied in who we actually want to be, as opposed to being driven by our stories. And so this weekend, I hope you guys take some time to, first of all, I hope you're not experiencing an emotional flashback, but it's always more efficacious to prepare for your emotional flashbacks before they happen, so that you're not trying to gather the skills, when you're in the midst of an emotional flashback, perhaps even without support, right? So the idea is to prepare ahead, and your preparation ahead, when you're in a calm state, then is going to allow you more space, so that when that emotional wave hits, that emotional flashback, you're better able to situate and organize yourself, to ground yourself. And so take some time this weekend to reflect on your emotional flashbacks. Where do you struggle with those? And how you can begin establishing an environment, different tools, resources, protocols, habits that will allow you to gain some space between the stimulus and response when you notice an emotional flashback is coming at you. So that's it for today. As always, thanks for being here, and I hope that you'll be well. And always, the most important thing is to have fun. Have fun. Find a way to laugh. Bring back the playfulness and joy. Replacing those negative memories in your subconscious with positive experiences of joy, connection, laughter, play. That is so regulating to your nervous system. And I truly believe that the more you laugh, the more you're able to give yourself experiences of opposite of that emotional flashback. And that is another tool also that you can learn to manage them more effectively. So have a great weekend, guys. Take care, be well, and I'll see you soon.